Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to go through my Wirework essentials, so what tools I recommend to use for Wirework, both to start out with as a beginner, but also what recommendations I have to add to your collection along the way. And then what I'm also going to do is put some links to some of these items down in the description box below the video here, so if you want to have a bit of a closer look, then you can go there and have a look at them. So then the section that I'm going to start out with is going through the pliers that I recommend. So both basic pliers to start out with if you're a beginner, but then also pliers to add to your collection along the way that I find are quite essential. So say if you've just discovered Wirework and you want to give it a go, try it out, but you're not entirely sure if it's going to be for you or not. One thing I would say is obviously you need some basic pliers to be able to really do much with Wirework. But then what I would recommend that you look at is a set of basic pliers. And what I started out with myself is a set like this. So it comes in a case and you can really buy these in most jewelry making supply shops in one way or another. So you can get different sets, and it's just the back of it. And they come in this case as well, so it's easy for storage, and also if you want to say take it traveling with you. And also these pliers were the first kind of proper set I bought, but again kind of beginner set, but still they tend to also be pretty good quality still I find. Obviously some of them might not be, but overall I do find that they are, and for pretty good prices. So this is the set that I got here, just as an example. You got 3 other pliers, which is basically the 3 basic pliers that you need. So we have a chain nose plier, and then a round nose plier, and then there's a cutter here, so a wire cutter, which you'll obviously need as well. Then you have a few other things in this one, so a cutter, and then some tweezers, and you have a little bit of a bead scoop, and then just a bead reamer here if you need to use that. And then this one also comes with a little bit of storage case, but again it can vary depending what case and what set you get. So I can only definitely recommend that if you're starting out, that you start with a set like this, because chances are if you stick with Wirework and if you enjoy it, you might still even keep using these pliers. For instance, I'm still using these pliers now, even though I've also upgraded to other ones that I kind of consider better quality. I still do use these pliers because they are quite good. So, like I said, you will need some wire cutters here. These are just regular wire cutters. And then chain nose pliers. Flat nose pliers are also very useful, but if you have to choose between chain nose and flat nose, I'll probably say chain nose will come in most handy because they have this tapered tip, so you have a smaller tip to it as well, which can be quite handy and get into more places. So either get a set like this where you have these, or if you want to buy them individually, I do just recommend at least these 3 pliers to start out with, and you'll be able to do a lot of things with these alone. So if you are just giving Wirework a try because you're interested in trying it out and seeing if it fits for you, then I'd say a set like this, or at least the basic pliers, is all you really need to start out with. You don't need anything else but this, obviously, apart from the wire itself. So I would just recommend something like this. Everything from here on are really extras, both the pliers and other materials that I have, that I still recommend having, but it's kind of things you can then add on to your collection along the way. So build it up as you go, obviously if you find out that it is something you want to continue doing. So this is the first set that I really do recommend starting out with. Now if you then found out that you want to continue and you want to start adding some more different pliers to your collection, the next 2 pliers here are 2 that I can only really highly recommend. I use these myself all the time. So the 2 different ones, these ones here are some nylon coated pliers, so basically flat nose pliers but coated with this nylon, because what this does is then help prevent your wire from marking because of the pliers, because obviously pliers can mark it if you're not careful. So these ones, you can both use them to use with the wire, but what I use these for the most is actually straightening the wire. So you have a wire coming off a reel or something, you can straighten this out, or if you have a bit of some kinks or bends in it, you can just straighten this out. I do already have a video where I show how you can straighten wire in different ways, and this is one of the methods that I use. So this is what I use for that a lot, all the time pretty much. So I very much recommend these, and you can get them for pretty good prices as well. And then this other one here is a 6-step bell making plier. I use this all the time. Now that I have this, I use this far more than my round nose pliers, because it's a bell making plier, but this specific one, you can get them in loads of different types and amounts and sizes. But this specific one has 6 different steps on it, so ranging from a small one all the way up to a larger one. And I just really find this so useful, because what this does compared to a round nose plier, I'm just going to get one out here. If you look at a round nose plier, you can obviously achieve all the same things pretty much, maybe not the bigger ones there, depending on the pliers, but this is tapered. So if you're doing something where you want the same size loops multiple times, you're going to have to make sure you hit the exact same spot on the round nose pliers. Whereas with these, you just have to use the same step to achieve that. And it makes it so much easier, and I use these a lot. And pretty much all the time, almost, instead of my round nose pliers. So these two pliers here are ones that I definitely recommend kind of adding to your collection as the next step. And I find myself using these all the time, like I said. So I only highly recommend to add these. So the next pliers I'm going to show you here are also basically a range of basic pliers, but it's kind of pliers that are the next level of pliers rather than just the kind of cheaper ones. And it's these ones here. So again, these are ones that you kind of can upgrade to when you find out if it's something you want to continue doing, to get kind of better quality pliers than just the basic ones. Like I said, I still use the basic ones, but I'm very happy that I upgraded to these because they are great pliers. These are the Xuron brand of pliers, and they're quite well known. They do pliers for loads of things, but jewel making is one of them. And what these are, different ones. So I have my chain nose pliers, then I have a flat nose plier, and then again round nose pliers, and then I have here a flush cutter. So it's basically just the wire cutter, but this is a flush cutter, and there's a slight difference, and I'm going to go through that as well. But the difference with these is the Xuron ones is they make them so the tips and the actual pliers are so fine compared to, say, the regular basic pliers that you get. So if I show you here, these are the chain nose. So they are tapered and they do go out to a finer tip, but if you compare them with these, you can see how different the Xuron ones are. So that's really the reason that I got these, was just to be able to get more detail in with my pliers. So you can do much more detail work with these because they are so much finer, yet they're still really strong and very great quality. So I'm expecting these to last a long time as well, obviously, like you would expect most pliers. And the same principle with the round nose pliers. Again, they taper, but if you compare them to the Xuron ones, you can see how much finer of a tip these go out to. So there's a big difference there. So I personally would recommend, there's loads of other pliers and loads of other brands, but I'm very happy with these. So if you kind of want to upgrade from the basic ones or the cheaper ones, I would recommend Xuron a lot because they are great pliers as well. And these ones are the flush cutters. I also have another pair that I'm going to show you. The difference between flush cutters and regular wire cutters is kind of quite substantial actually, because regular wire cutters, when you cut off your wire, you're always going to be left with a bit of a tip at the end of the wire. Where flush cutters, what they do is on one side of them, so the back here, if you cut like this with the wire here, it actually cuts a flat side to the wire. So that can be really useful, again, upgrading to a flush cutter after a while down the road, once you find out that's what you want to do. I really do recommend that. This is, again, a finer one. So the tip is so fine you can really get into little tiny spaces to cut off your wire quite often than weaving wire. So this is some of them. I'm just going to leave that one there. What I also then have is another flush cutter, and that's this one. So this is a beadalon one, and this is a little bit more heavy duty. So again, a flush cutter, and it's brilliant quality ones, but you can see they're a little bit more heavy duty, a bit bigger, because what these can actually do is manage a bit of a thicker gauge wire than what they can. Because these ones, it says on here, goes up to a 2mm copper wire. And again, it does that flush cut, so you get a flat side to the end of the wire, doing it on the back side of the pliers there. But these ones don't go up to quite as high thickness of wire. You can probably still use them, but they might blunt more, or you might damage them quicker than if you don't. So that's why I keep these reserved for a bit smaller gauge wires, and I use these if I have thicker gauge wires that I want to cut with flush cutters. So again, once you're kind of ready for it, I recommend at some point upgrading to flush cutters. And really what you want, because what you want to use them for is up to you. Obviously they cost more than basic wire cutters, but that's also because you are getting a lot more quality for the money. But that's obviously something I really do recommend upgrading to along the way. So the next thing that I'm going to recommend investing in down the road is actually some metal files, because obviously it's wire work and the wire is metal. So what you'll find is, when it's mainly for when you cut off the ends of your wire, you'll find even if you use a flush cutter, there's always going to be a little bit of scratchiness, or it can catch on something, and that's where using metal files really come in handy. So I kind of have two different kinds here. These ones are just regular files. It's a set. It was really cheap, so you don't have to spend much on it, and you just have loads of different shapes here, depending obviously what you need them for. But then you just have your file, and you just gently on the end of the wire kind of file it. Make sure you go in the same direction when you file, like this, because it can come really handy to just file off the ends of the wire so you avoid that kind of scratchiness and being able to catch on anything. It really does make a big difference. So these are regular files, and this one here is what's called a wire rounder tool. See if I can get it up. And what it does is, it's also a file in a way, but it's a bit different. You kind of have this handle, and you have a little bit of a cup at the end of it. You'll see that closer when you kind of have a close look at one. What you then do is take the end of your wire that you've cut off, put it in there, and then you just gently roll it a bit like this. You don't need to press hard or anything. And in there there's a little, you could kind of call it a little file in there, and then that files off the end and basically rounds off the end of the wire. And it does the same thing, but it can be a bit easier to use this, to be honest, but only goes up to so thick wires, so depends what wire you want to round off. But that really does help to take off that sharpness of the end of your wires as well. So some kind of metal file, or both of these, whatever, I do recommend getting along the way. It will make a difference to the end result of your wire work as well. Now for when doing wire work as well, you can really get an endless amount of something like mandrels. So mandrels are something you use to help shape the wire around or make bales and that kind of thing. But there's so many that you can really just keep getting loads of different ones. So what I would recommend to get at some point, also because it's very cheap I find, is something like this. So this is just a multi-step mandrel. So you have multiple steps, you can see different sizes, but you also have different shapes on this one. This one then actually also comes apart for easy storage. But you have a round one, you have ovals, round ones again there, different sizes, square, and then triangles. And it's just handy to have. You're not necessarily always going to use this. I don't use it much, but I do use it sometimes. It's just really nice to have all these different ones, instead of, for instance, saying if you wanted some of these shapes and you had to buy a separate mandrel for each of them, that would very quickly add up. So it's much more efficient just getting something like this, than just having it lying around. But then another type of mandrel that can also be quite useful, or essentially even really down the road, and also quite specific, are ring mandrels. So these are just two that I have here, two different ones. So they obviously do the same thing. The difference is this is completely round. They're both metal. You can also get plastic ones. It's completely up to you which ones. The plastic ones are always cheaper, usually anyway. Obviously the metal will cost a bit more, but you can still get them for good prices. So it's more if you kind of get into wire work more and you want to make rings, it's obviously handy to be able to size them properly. This one as well has sizes for different places in the world, so you know, in case say you maybe want to end up selling your pieces as well, that'd be quite handy. And it has kind of ridges on the side, which sometimes is handy depending on the ring that you make. The bead will lie nicely in there, but here's just a round one. So ring mandrels are also, you can say in a way, quite essential if you kind of end up wanting to make rings and become a bit more serious with making them, with sizing them and all that kind of thing. So ring mandrels are also quite an essential type of mandrel that you can get. So another thing in what you can call kind of the mandrel department here is some crochet hooks. So these aren't obviously officially mandrels for wire work, but I just have this set. Again, it was really cheap somewhere online, and they're actually metal ones as well, so that works great because they're then strong enough to be able to use with wire, whereas maybe plastic ones would eventually break or something. But these are metal ones, and I just find it really handy having this whole range of sizes. Most often I then use these to help make bales, because obviously you have these round kind of barrels, and then you can just choose the size that you need to use, if it's a bale or if it's just using it for something else, and basically use them as mandrels. So it's just a little extra. I find these very useful just to have different sizes of already kind of ready-made barrels and mandrels here. The next couple of tools then are some tools that I find quite useful just to have available to be able to use. They're not essential again because you can find other ways, but also they aren't that expensive, so I really just find it very useful just to have them. And these are different types of clamps. So most of the time I quite often use these to start off work with. So if I'm making a wire braid, a bracelet of some sort, or something like that, if it's really handy to use these open them up. These are spring clamps here. Put your wire in there, different lengths, and then fasten it back down, and then this will hold the ends of the wire fastened, because obviously otherwise they'll just be open wires and they're going to be kind of moving all over the place. So these are just two different sizes. They're really handy to have. I use them quite a lot, especially starting off things like braids and bracelets in general. Another thing is this ring clamp. So this is technically a ring clamp that you use. You just pull this out here, and then you open a bit, you put a ring in here that you can then work on. But you can also use that in the same way as you use these. So just put your wire in there instead, and then tighten it back up. And then your wire's sitting there. And this has got some leather, so it'll protect the wire as well. And obviously these have got a coating on them as well, so it's not going to be too bad. So just some kind of clamp really can be very useful as well. And ring clamps you can get in a lot of jewellery shops, jewellery making supply shops. These ones are quite cheap to buy, whether it's hardware stores or online, even Amazon, eBay. You can get sets of these for quite cheap. So again, just a nice and handy thing to have available to use. Now the last thing that I just want to mention is maybe going to seem a bit unusual for wire work, but I saw these for other purposes ages ago, and I just kind of had a bit of an idea to try it with wire and see if it would work. So what this is a yarn bowl. So obviously it looks like that. This is just the one that I've got. And that's where you have these, whether it's holes and spirals in them, to help when you knit or when you crochet or something. You obviously have the yarn in there, and then it won't be moving around, but it'll be confined to here, but it'll continue to come off of the actual roll that you're taking it from. So I just thought it might work with wire as well, and my thought was, because mainly for wire weaving, sometimes you'll cut off a length of wire and then weave with that, and that's fine. But my biggest thought was when you weave with your wire but it's still attached to the reel, because I do prefer to do that when I can, when obviously the project calls for it. Because if you're not sure how much wire you'll need to weave with, I try and make it so I leave it on the reel, because if you run out you'll obviously have to add new in to avoid that. I then thought maybe use this, because when I weave with the wire off the reel just kind of rolls around and it gets a bit annoying. And what also happens is, I just got one here, what I also find happens is, even if you lie it like this, obviously this will roll a lot, but if you put it like this and then you take the wire off, doing this, I find that it tends to kink quite a lot, far more than I first of all want it to, but also it's because it's attached to the reel. It kinks far more than when I cut off a length and just work with that. So my thought was, the same principle as using it with yarn, was just to put the reel in there, and then obviously the length of wire. Then either use the holes, but obviously if you use the holes, it's kind of stuck here, unless you then have to cut it off. So what I just use is this spiral, and get it all the way in, and then I just weave with it like this, the same way that I would weave with it if it wasn't in the bowl. The difference is now it's confined, and it just then, I need more, it rolls off and it stays nice and clean and clear. And also I get far less kinks, if any, when using this bowl, rather than just having the reel rolling around by itself. So I tried it out and it turned out to work really well as I've tried it out. So the idea worked, and obviously leaving it in the spiral, if you then want to start another project, you can just take this out and then put it back in when you want to get back to it. So I really have found this very useful. I'm definitely going to keep using this for when I weave with my wire, but keep it on the reel. So it's obviously not at all an essential for wire work, but maybe down the road. I do really recommend it, as in the use that I thought of it for. It really works very well. So I'm very happy that I tried that out. So if it's something that might be interesting, I really do highly recommend it. It definitely works well. So that's the final thing here. So I really hope that this video here of Wirework Essentials, the things that I recommend and use myself, if not all the time, then a lot of the time, that it was useful and helpful for you. Either if you're starting out with wire, like I said, if you're a beginner, or even recommendations that might help you if you're already a wire worker. So I really do hope that this was helpful, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these wirework wings, and I've turned them into a necklace in this case. You can kind of think of it, if you want it, as like a guardian angel piece of jewellery as well. You can also use the wings for whatever you want to. So this is the necklace I'm going to show you how to do. So I made each wing separately and then just attached like a gemstone tassel there in the middle in the blue and clear gemstones, and then attach them onto a chain. So it's going to hang really nicely on the neckline and dangle like